Dear beloved saints, happy Friday. I've been wanting to do this Psalm 78. I want to do a video on the shadows of that. Just amazing. But a lot of times when people see the word like law and statutes and stuff, they go right to the Mosaic law. But what he's talking about in this is the oracles of God, the teachings of God. Not just that, but all of it, especially the prophecies. And what's so sad is that people miss that, like in the book of Hebrews, God warns, what pleases and displeases him. Says they didn't enter in because of unbelief. And despite his faithfulness and all the ways he showed how much he loved them and wanted the best for them, every chance they got, I mean, on top of the supernatural provision, I mean, out of thin air, bread raining down from heaven, water coming out of a 5-story rock. I mean, just crazy. Um, Yet they still, every chance, got to accuse him of bringing them out there to die and their children over and over again, no matter what supernatural signs and wonders he gave them for all those years. And so finally, they didn't enter in, and he waited till they died off. They walked in circles pointlessly until somebody that would believe his promises got him. Now, when the promises came, because the law, the feast days, everything all pointed to Jesus, right? So they want to stay in the shadow instead of the real thing the shadow points to. They reject the real thing the shadow's pointing to and want to remain over here in the shadow. Because it says the law was a shadow of good things to come and not the very image of the thing. It couldn't take away sin. It didn't save anyone. All it did was make you guilty, brought a curse, brought wrath. And yet they wanted to stay. And it's amazing to me. Because this really is, and if you look at this, what I'm going to show you here, it's all about believing God, his goodness, what he wants for you, his loving way, that he doesn't want harm. He's not looking for a way to condemn you. How much does he have to do? He gave us his only son, leaving heaven. Do you understand? An immortal, eternally existing God experienced the torment of not just death, because he didn't have to die. He never had to feel death. He never had to experience such an ugly, evil thing as death. And it's God's enemy. God is life. Death is his enemy. It says it. And it was ours that held us in fear and in bondage until Jesus. Bondage of the fear of death. And this just amazes me. So it really is a matter of salvation here. I want to show you what happens here. And I wanted to point out that when you see something in the New Testament, and like I say, Paul's like 70% or something, it's just a number I'm making up, a large percent of what he says is directly out of the Old Testament. And it's worded just a little differently. For instance, when I did the video on work out your salvation with fear and trembling, I said, oh, I know what that is. That's serve the Lord with fear, rejoice with the trembling. And that's where you got the idea of fear and trembling. And so you want to serve and rejoice. That's how you do it. You work your inner salvation outward. And so we have to look at the Bible's definitions of it instead of preachers that are trying to legalistically make up whatever they think that means. And so I want to show you that it's worded a little differently, because by the time of Paul's day, like, in the New Testament here, people were speaking Koine Greek, not Hebrew and Aramaic as much. Some scholars were speaking Hebrew, but it was mostly Greek, just like English is everywhere today. Because of Alexander the Great overtaking Babylon, it became Hellenized. So Greek was the language. So you'll see the wording is a slightly different. So he was like, why is it? I mean, it's the same, but it's a little, it's like spoken differently, right? Because it's in Greek and not in Hebrew. So it's going to be a little different, even though it's saying the same thing. Because they can't be identical, like literal because like English doesn't have the same connotations, and words in Greek have like a really deep and colorful connotations and meanings to them that we would not see on the surface. So it's hard to explain that, but it'll just be a little bit different. So watch when we look at it, okay? I don't know how much different this one is, but I know that this is an Old Testament verse, but we're going to go to Matthew 13, okay? It says, Matthew 13, verses 34 and 35. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. So that's in Psalm 78. So let's go look at it. And this is where he's talking about. It's like they saw all my works and everything I did for them. Just they won't believe. They won't believe my salvation. They won't believe my salvation. Let's look at it, okay? And that's what this is quoted from. So the reason he speaks, and it says it right here in 78, give ear, O my people, to my law. Now, law is not always Mosaic law. It's the oracles of God. It's everything that points to Christ, all right? Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. See how it's written a little differently? I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter dark sayings of old, where it says it a little different in Matthew 13. It says that it might be fulfilled, which is spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables and utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. In this, it says dark sayings of old. All right. Which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, showing to the generation to come in praises of the Lord, and his strength, and his wonderful works that he has done. For he established a testimony in Jacob, and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make known to their children. The law is not just the Ten Commandments. It's all the teachings, oracles of God. It's all of, not just the Torah, but the Psalms and all the prophets too. That's what it means. It's not just this. That the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in God, and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and might not be. See, the reason they had to keep these feasts and stuff is because then they'd recognize Christ when he came. They all point down, like the Passover, he's the lamb. All right, that they might set their hope on God, not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright. This is not legalism. This is about them believing God, that he had the best for them, that he loved them, that he wanted them to succeed, not trying to set them up for a trap all the time and was going to forsake them. And whose spirit was not steadfast with God. Listen to the words here. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back in the day of battle. They kept not the covenant of God and refused to walk in his law, and forgot his works and his wonders that he had showed them. Marvelous things that he did in the sight of their fathers and in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zon. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through. He made the waters to stand as a heap. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. He clave the rocks in the wilderness and gave them drink as out of the great depths. He brought streams also out of the rock and caused waters to run down like rivers. That's what I was saying. It didn't just trickle. It was a huge rock that poured rivers until there was lakes of fresh water there for 1 million people. And they sinned yet more against him. This isn't about the law. This isn't about keeping, not lying, not stealing. This is about them not believing God. It tells us flat out. See, all these things are the thing itself is not what's important. To keep this law, the law stuff itself is not the big important thing. The big important thing is, what is that pointing to? You get it? They're forsaking the thing this is pointing to and staying over here. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. Here we go. And they tempted God in their heart by asking meat for their lust. Yea, they spake against God. They said, Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, he smote a rock that the waters gushed out, and the streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide flesh for his people? Remember, they kept asking for more. Well, at least we had fresh vegetables and fruits in Egypt. I mean, at least we could. It was just so he rains quail. They want meat. He rains them right out of the sky. Therefore, the Lord heard this and was wroth. It's just the attitude they had. Not that they were asking for it. That's fine. He provides things. It's the way. Is that it was never good. It was always God's got a bad motive. He's not a good God. He doesn't care if we die out here. What does he care? And was wroth. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel. Here you go. Because they believed not in God and trusted not in his salvation. I'm sorry, did you hear that? If this is not a picture of Jesus, I don't know what it is. Whew. Because they believed not in God and trusted not in his salvation. Though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven and had rained down manna upon them to eat and had given them the corn of heaven. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. He caused an east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He rained flesh also upon them as dust, and feathered fowls as the sand of the sea. It just fell right out of the sky. And he let it fall in the midst of their camp, round about their habitations. So they did eat and were filled, for he gave them their own desire. They were not estranged from their lust, but while their meat was yet in their mouths, the wrath of God came upon them and slew the fattest of them, and smote down the chosen men of Israel. For all this they sinned still and believed not for his wondrous works. It is always about believing God. It is always about taking him at his word. These people had, with their eyes, seen this over and over and over again. Therefore their days did he consume in vanity. We don't see this today, but it was common. Supernatural stuff was common and believed. But God outdid. I mean, they were not paranormal and supernatural things were not rare. People believed in the spirit realm, but God just went above and beyond. I mean, just wow for them. Therefore, so all this, they still sinned and believed not for his wondrous works. Therefore, their days did he consume in vanity, and their years in trouble. Remember I said they just ran around in circles till they died. When he slew them, then they sought him, and they returned and inquired early after God. And they remembered that God was their rock, and the high God their redeemer. Nevertheless, they did flatter him with their mouth, and they lied unto him with their tongues. But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity, and destroyed them not. Yea, many a time turned he his anger away, and did not stir up all his wrath. For he remembered again that they were but flesh, a wind that passed away, and cometh not again. How oft did they provoke him in the wilderness, and grieve him in the desert? Yea, they turned back and tempted God, and limited the Holy One of Israel. They remembered not his hand, nor the day when he delivered them from the enemy, how he had wrought his signs in Egypt and his wonders in the fields of Zoan. He had turned their rivers into blood and their floods that they could not drink. He sent divers sorts of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs, which destroyed them. He gave also their increase unto the caterpillar, and their labor unto the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamore trees with frost. God did all of this for Israel when he did this to Egypt. And he gave up their cattle also to the hail, and their flocks to hot thunderbolts. He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, and indignation, and trouble by sending all evil angels among them. Evil angels. I've never heard it said that way. That's interesting. So he made a way to his anger. Yeah, that was the angel of death, I guess. He spared not their soul from death, but gave their life over to the pestilence, and smote all the firstborn in Egypt, the chief of the strength in the tabernacle of Ham, but made his own people. Remember, Moses said, cursed be Canaan, Ham's son. It's a prophecy. But he made his own people to go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like flock. He led them on safely, so they feared not, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. He brought them to the border of his sanctuary, even to his mountain, which his right hand had purchased. He cast out the heathen also before them, and divided them in inheritance by line, and made the tribes of Israel to dwell in their tents. Yet they tempted and provoked the Most High, and kept not his testimonies. They did not believe the promises, guys, and turned back and dealt unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow, for they provoked him to anger with their high places. They were worshiping other gods, because those gods will give them all the earthly stuff they want, and moved him to jealousy with their graven images. When God had heard this, he was wroth, and greatly abhorred Israel, so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent which he placed among men, and delivered his strength into captivity, and his glory into the enemy's hand. He gave his people over to also the sword, and was wroth with his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and maidens were not given in marriage. The priests fell by the sword, and the widows made no lamentation. Then the Lord awakened as one out of sleep, and like a mighty man that shouteth by reason of wine, and he smote his enemies in the hinder parts, and he put them to a perpetual reproach. Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah. This is a prophecy right here. Chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Zion which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like high places, like the earth which he established forever. He chose David, also his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From following the ewes, great with young, he brought him to feed Jacob his people, and Israel his inheritance. So he fed them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. This is prophetic. I'm sorry it was long, but you had to see it. I wanted you to see what it said. They kept tempting him because they believed not. Their hope was not in God, and they believed not in his salvation. Do we want to do that? So all the people that once saved, always saved of the devil. Really? Because God says when you doubt him, it's an evil heart of unbelief. And he hates when we doubt him, what he promises us. Whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believe thou this? What are you going to say? Well, I mean, yeah, if you keep doing this and that, I mean, you can lose it. Is that how you're going to answer? Are you going to say, yes, I do, Lord? Because I do, and I hope you do too, because that's his promise. Let God be true and every man a liar. By grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It's the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. He said, if you believe in Jesus, though you were dead, yet will you live. Believe him? Yep, sure do. Because he doesn't like it when we don't believe in his salvation, when we don't trust in his salvation, when our hope is not in him. He says it flat out. So I trust him. I know he's good. He doesn't give us all our worldly stuff we want, because sometimes that's the worst thing that can happen to you for your character and your growth anyway. Somebody wrote me the other day and said, how can I make God give me everything I want? Can you hit rewind real quick? It's like deleted. Like, first of all, you got to grow up. God's not going to give you everything you want, and thank God he doesn't. Because if I'd have gotten my way, I'd have broke up marriages, I'd have done this, I'd have done all kinds of stuff to destroy myself. You know, when you're young and even now, I think, because, well, if I tell him exactly what's got to be done to fix it. No, you don't tell God exactly what's got to be done to fix it. You get an attitude of gratitude with what you have now. You don't get what you want till you want what you got. You got to be grateful for what you have. Then you can get more. But until there's gratitude for where you are and what you already have, no. This world stuff will never fulfill you. Our hope is in God. Our purpose is in the Lord. Our joy is in Him. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. It's all about trusting Him. Praise the Lord for His blessed assurance in Jesus. You guys have a great weekend. I'm sorry it was a little long, but I really wanted to share it with you. God bless you. Have a good weekend.